Hi, welcome everyone who's joining the webinar. We're going to let everyone come into the room and we'll get started in just a minute. Welcome to everyone who's coming into the webinar. We're going to get started in just a minute. Okay, welcome everyone. I am Audrey Wenning, the Director of Transportation for the Metropolitan Planning Council. MPC is an independent nonprofit organization that works to advance the sustainability, equity, and prosperity of the Greater Chicago region. We're so thrilled to have all of you joining us here today, and we thank HDR for being the generous sponsor of this work. HDR specializes in engineering, architecture, environmental, and construction services. To make sure we can all engage easily, I want to go over a few housekeeping points briefly. We've enabled the chat and Q&A functions here on Zoom. You can find them both in the bottom portion of your screen. We ask that you use the chat box throughout the session to share your thoughts with us or to get my attention about something. And then we ask you to use the Q&A function to post any questions so that we can easily access them. Here's what you can expect today. I'm going to give a brief framing, few comments, and then we'll hear some welcoming remarks from Alderperson Abby Beck of Batavia. Then we'll hear from 4 excellent panelists about how they've been funding and implementing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. After that, I'll ask a few initial questions, and then I'll open up the floor for live questions from you all in the audience. So please be sharing your questions with us in the Q&A function throughout the event to make sure your question gets asked. The event also features live closed captioning, so you can click closed captions here in Zoom to turn them on and off. And we'll also note that this event is being recorded, so we will share a link of the recording and resources in a follow-up email. Before we get started with our speakers, I wanted to take a moment to frame our conversation. The concept for our event series is implementation of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus Regional Climate Action Plan. This plan gives specific recommendations for how communities can take action on a range of activities within their municipalities. Specifically, this series focuses on how communities can benefit the climate by reducing the amount of driving needed through making community investments that support biking, walking, and transit. And today, we are specifically here to talk about funding. Several recent developments are infusing a lot of money into our transportation system. And it's up to all of us to ensure that funding gets spent so we are making the system more affordable, sustainable, safe, and connected. We've underinvested in our most basic and climate-friendly modes of transportation for way too long. Now is the time to prioritize biking and walking in local transportation programs. If ever there was a time to do so, it's now, when we have a climate crisis. Transportation is the #1 cause of greenhouse gas emissions, and we need to prioritize zero emission modes like biking and walking now. The average cost of a new car is $47,000. That's more than half the median income in our region. Gas prices have surged and people are really struggling to get around. We need to give people more affordable transportation options. Walking is free, biking is free, and both of these help access transit, which is a lot less expensive than driving. And then third, I'll point out, unfortunately, the traffic safety crisis we're experiencing. In the past 5 years, Illinois pedestrian fatalities are up 46%, and bicyclist fatalities are up 34%. In just the past year, both pedestrian and bicycle fatalities were up 22%. It's obvious we need more and better infrastructure for biking and walking. The good news is now there are some resources to do that. The bipartisan infrastructure law is making more money available to municipalities and counties. The Illinois DOT reported in January that there's 27% more federal funding allotments as a result of the new federal law. Rebuild Illinois was passed in 2019, doubling the state gas tax, and half of MFT goes to local jurisdictions. These funds are very flexible. They're not only for roads. Municipalities and counties are explicitly allowed to spend these funds on bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. We're going to drop a link to an IDOT resource in the chat. And then I also want to highlight that counties are explicitly allowed to do so as well. Last year, a law was passed by the Illinois legislature explicitly clarifying that motor fuel tax can be spent by counties in northeastern Illinois on bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So I'll wrap up by saying the point is that if we continue to prioritize road building, we're locking ourselves into ever more expensive transportation that we need to maintain, that we will make the climate and traffic safety crises worse. A solution to all of these crises is to make walking and biking easier and safer. If ever was there a time to take action, it's now. And the best part is we now have resources to do it. It's just all about the way we prioritize those resources. So with that, I will turn the mic over to the Fifth Ward alderperson in the city of Batavia, Illinois. Abby received a master's in environmental science from the University of Nevada in Las Vegas, where she focused her research on the balance between urban sustainability and the quality of life. After graduation, she moved back to her hometown of Batavia and began volunteering with the Batavia Environmental Commission and Well Batavia Initiative to advocate for better walking and biking infrastructure. She participated in the Active Transportation Alliance's Bike Walk Everytown trainings in 2017 and the America Walks Walking College Fellowship in 2018. These experiences gave her a foundation in planning and policy and a strong determination to make a deeper impact. Now she's serving her first term as Fifth Ward alderwoman and has successfully advocated for various improvements in Batavia. When not biking or walking, she's hiking or paddling with the Conservation Foundation as their senior advancement officer. So welcome, Alderperson Beck, and we're so excited to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Audrey. It's such an honor to be included on this list of people here today among the organizations and leaders that I admire so much for your work advancing walkability and bikeability. When I tell people that I ran for city council to advocate for walking, I am met with some understandably funny looks. Walking doesn't seem to be the hot pressing issue that gets most people fired up to go door knocking. But when people ask me why it's important or why their city leadership should care, this is what I say. I argue that walkability and bikeability are very accurate proxy measures for three very important goals that municipal governments should be caring about: the pursuit of social equity, environmental sustainability, and economic resilience. Social equity because owning a car should not be the ante that someone has to pay to participate in society. Whether someone is too young, too old, or physically unable or financially cannot afford to drive, they should still have access to daily needs. This came up in a recent debate we had in Batavia on whether it was appropriate to move our local food pantry from its central downtown location, where it has overgrown its facility, to the back of an industrial park, where it was disconnected from neighborhoods. There were no sidewalks, no bike lanes, no transit. And in a time when many people are facing that decision between buying food or buying gas. And second, on environmental sustainability, which is the focus of this series, as adopters of the Greenest Region Compact and the Climate Action Plan, thank you to Edith from the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, Batavia has made that commitment to addressing climate change and reducing our local emissions to hit the regional targets set forth in that plan. The only way we can achieve those goals, as Audrey mentioned, is that we have to be able to provide options for our residents to get out of their cars and to make active transportation safe and a feasible alternative to getting in their cars. And finally, on economic resilience, Right now, too large a portion of our municipal budget, I can say, is going towards the construction, the maintenance, and the safety enforcement on our roadways. And we're not generating enough tax revenue on those roads to cover those costs. As leaders, we are the stewards of our tax dollars, and we are the stewards of the land between our boundaries. And so it's our charge to make really efficient and productive use of both. In Batavia, we just removed parking minimums downtown, which was a good step forward to creating the space necessary to make better use, better tax generating use in our downtown, create the density necessary to create vibrancy and accessibility and a business district that can actually serve people's daily needs, that people want to live nearby. So even if walkability and bikeability are not currently a priority for your city leadership, social equity, environmental sustainability, and environmental or economic resilience absolutely should be. And I would argue that you can't achieve these goals without having a walkable or bikeable town. And what I have found as I complete my first term on city council is that that connection between those broader goals and active transportation is not necessarily clear to everyone in leadership. The default mindset is still that everyone has a car and everyone should drive. So the first step as city leaders is to understand that connection, to make that really clear, to change that default mindset, and then reinforce it with every discussion, with every decision about every development in your city. And as I remind myself, and I remind my fellow electeds and staff too, is that I know I won't live long enough to see the walkable or bikeable Batavia of my dreams. But we will never get to that vision if we don't start making those small changes today, changing the conversation today, and start making the investments now. So I'm so excited for this panel to understand the investment potential that is out there. And thank you all so much for your interest and you're taking the time to learn about it too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alderperson Beck. That was just fantastic. And now I'm so pleased to introduce our next speaker, Lindsay Bailey. Lindsay is a senior planner at the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. She focuses on equitable transportation and parking policy. She's managed a variety of community planning projects, from an award-winning downtown master plan for Illinois' second largest city to UIC's multimodal transportation plan, as well as local active transportation plans and parking management studies. In addition to her work at CMAP, she's the co-founder of the Parking Reform Network, and she also has served as the co-chair of the Chicagoland Complete Streets Coalition and on various local transportation committees. She has a Master's of Science degree in GIS and has also achieved a urban and regional planning degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. So welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you, Audrey, for that introduction. I'm going to be speaking, I guess my slides should be coming up. I'm going to speak to CMAP's role and about CMAP and some of the federal funds available through the new Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, or IIJA. And next slide. For those who don't know CMAP, we are the federally designated planning organization for the 7-county region of northeastern Illinois. And in that capacity, CMAP is charged with developing a long-range comprehensive plan, which is called Onto 2050, and as well as prioritizing and programming federal transportation dollars. Next. So as it relates, I think the slide hasn't changed yet, but thanks. As it relates to the new federal infrastructure law, CMAP is evaluating the legislation and policies for the changes that will and how they will impact our core programs. And we are also preparing for new eligibilities and increased funding for our programs. And in that capacity, we are working with our state and federal partners to implement the new guidance. And we expect our kickoff for the call for projects and transportation to kick off in January of 2023. And it's a little hard to see on my slide. I got a little messed up, but we also are looking at how we can coordinate and prioritize all these opportunities as a cohesive region. Next slide. So I included this one because it's still even confusing to me of how the money gets from the feds to our programs. And so very broadly, after the legislation authorizes those federal dollars, they go to IDOT. And then we get a predetermined percentage, which is 45%, that comes to CMAP, and that goes to our various programs that we run, including the Surface Transportation Program, Congestion Mitigation, Air Quality, and the Transportation Alternatives Program, and then our general planning. Next slide. Illinois is estimated to see funding increases of around 30% over the life of the new bill. In this table that I've got up here, the blue programs are those that CMAP manages, and the green ones highlight the funding that goes to the state and that the state programs out. Next slide, so you can just see the changes. So we have used that time since the bill passed in November to be funded in mid-March to really review how our formula programs that we administer around in the region will be impacted. For the CMAQ program, we saw eligibility clarified around things like micromobility or bike share, and for purchasing zero emission vehicles and infrastructure. TAP will see its project eligibility explicitly expanded to emphasize safety projects that address vulnerable road users and allows for use of the state's formula safety funds, that is the HSIP, as a local match up to 100%. I think that's super exciting and very important. And then additionally, the STVG, Surface Transportation Block Grant, has some expanded eligibility. So we're just continuing to keep a close eye on the guidance for all these programs as they continue to be released. Next slide. There are a bunch of other programs. They're a little less directly related to bike and ped funding. I just wanted to mention there was the carbon reduction program. It is kind of like a CMAQ 2.0, and Illinois is expected to see about 43 million in the first year. And as the MPO, we will be required to work with the state to develop a carbon reduction strategy by November of 2023. And that should include projects and strategies that support that reduction in emissions. There's also a large program for resilience and another for developing that EV network. Next slide. As I mentioned, our region is going to be competing nationally for new funding in IIJA for multimodal projects, bridges, freight, bike ped, EV charging, ADA, resilience, reconnecting communities. And it's super important that we get that regional alignment and coordination across municipalities and agencies so that we can get that funding. Next slide. But the one that I want to talk about now is the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. And that will be $1 billion per year over 5 years. And 40% of that will be going to the development of safety action plans, and 60% will be going to implementation of those plans. And CMAP is preparing an application this year for planning work to develop safety action plans. There's an emphasis on equity and multi-jurisdictional collaboration. So to emphasize that importance of collaboration, we don't want multiple jurisdictions applying for the same funding. So we are encouraging communities to apply for the pocket or the bucket of money for implementation. But if you are interested in applying for safety action plan development, please reach out to us. You can do it through me and I'll connect you to the right people so that we can coordinate and help build a stronger application. Next slide. So overall, to wrap up all that I've said, CMAP's role in making this implementation of this bill successful in Illinois is really to provide support and leadership to get the region on the same page so that we're not leaving money on the table. And like I said, if you're thinking about applying, please reach out to us, even if it's not for developing safety action plans, and we will coordinate with you and help you with that application. So thank you again, and we're super excited and also excited to hear what other folks have to say. There's a lot to unpack, and I only had a limited amount of time, so thanks again.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. And I'll note, people probably see that the chat is on fire because we're just dumping tons and tons of links in there, including links to CMAP's website for their different programs. CMAP has a lot of information online, but I'd reiterate what Lindsay said in terms of reaching out to CMAP for help. It's a great organization, and there are a lot of staff that do local technical assistance. So thank you so much, Lindsay, for your presentation. And now I'm very pleased to present Maggie Sherwinski from the Active Transportation Alliance. She is an advocacy manager there and has been working in the transportation field for more than a decade. She works with advocates, decision makers, and municipal staff to improve walking, biking, and transit throughout the Chicagoland region. She organizes webinars, networking events, and advocacy training to help individuals and grassroots leaders understand key pedestrian and bicycle policy concepts and build strong, effective advocacy campaigns. She also works with communities to help staff implement their complete streets policies and active transportation plans and build capacity to better access state and federal funding. So welcome, Maggie.
Thank you, Audrey, and hi, everyone. So today I want to speak a bit about the upcoming Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program funding opportunity. So you can go to the next slide. This is a funding opportunity. It's really our state's largest opportunity to fund walking, biking, and trail projects. And it comes around every 2 years. It is through the Illinois Department of Transportation. And it is a combination of both federal funding and state funding. So this year, it will have a total of $125 million available. In 2020, when the last cycle occurred, that was really when this grant increased its award amount. And in 2020, almost 100 projects were awarded funding across our state. And this is, I believe there was around $100 million available. So this is even more this year. So we're excited. We want to get the word out about ITEP. So you can go to the next slide. And actually real quick, this grant opportunity is opening August 1st. So in a couple weeks, it'll be open for 2 months. So August 1st to September 30th. So this is the time to get yourself prepared if you're, or making sure your staff members in your community are aware of the ITEP grant. So who's eligible to apply? So it needs to be a local entity with taxing authority. That could be a local government, a city, village, municipality, could be a county government, could be a school district, it could be a forest preserve, a park district, a transit agency, among others. And eligible projects, there are many types of eligible projects, but some highlights are pedestrian facilities. So that could be sidewalks, new sidewalks, paths, pedestrian signals, pedestrian crossings like crosswalks, refuge islands, and as well as bicycle facilities, so bike lanes, bike paths, bike routes, trails, as well as bike racks, as well as lighting, and then Rails to Trails projects. The next slide. So a few key points about that I just want to highlight as you're thinking about this grant and what types of projects you can apply for. So projects need to be serving a transportation need. They cannot be solely for recreation. So a project could provide both recreation and transportation, that's okay, but you really need to think about how can this project reach as many people as possible and connect to as many destinations as possible. And then again, your project can't be solely for recreation. So for example, a loop trail within a park would not qualify. Projects also cannot be for routine maintenance, such as restriping a bike lane, or cleaning up debris, or removing or repairing broken sidewalks or curbs. The cap for a project is $3 million per project. This is an increase from 2020. So previously it was $2 million. So this is $3 million, which is exciting that we'll perhaps see even larger projects. get funding. And then also this is a reimbursable program. So project sponsors must pay the initial costs upfront, and then will be reimbursed by IDOT as you submit paperwork throughout the process. Next slide. Oh, there's a photo of a sidewalk. Next slide. A little bit of more detail about the local match. So what we're excited about the ITEP program is 25% of funding has been set aside for high need communities. And there's also a sliding scale on the local match. So typically a grant will require the sponsor to pay 20% of the total project cost. But through ITEP, depending on if you do qualify for as a high need community, based on a few factors, based on your community size, based on your total property tax base, based on your percent below poverty level and your median household income, you could end up paying nothing. So 0%, you don't have to pay any local match, 0% or 10% or the standard 20%. So next slide. And to help support communities around the state apply for ITEP, we are partnering with, so Active Transportation Alliance is partnering with the Illinois Public Health Institute to help communities develop successful applications. And we're also partnering with IDOT on this. So we've got a 3-part webinar series. The first webinar is July 20th, so next Wednesday at 9:30 in the morning. And we'll be digging into the basics of ITEP and giving you some tips, best practices, and as well as information about scoring and other components of the grant. We have a lot of resources on a website, activetrans.org/ITEP from the 22 grant cycle when we first started hosting these webinars. And there's a long FAQ. That the grant program is very similar this year as it was to 2020. So if you want to get started now, check out that website. If you do have to prepare a cost estimate, engineering cost estimate when you apply. And if you are a community that is lower capacity, is higher need, and you need engineering support, we do have a list of engineering firm contacts that are willing to help as they are able. Communities develop a project scope and put together engineering cost estimates. So check out that website for resources. And next slide. And then this is, and you can scroll through. So this is just an outline of the different webinars so July 20th on ITEP basics, project eligibility and best practices, August 14th or 24th on the scoring. We'll walk through the application and then we'll have IDOT staff there to answer questions you might have. And then September 14th, IDOT will be back to answer any questions. And then that again, the grant closes September 30th. So that's all I have. So I'll pass it back to Audrey.
Thank you so much, Maggie. And I'm sure people are already registering for this event series. It couldn't be at a better time. And we just want to encourage folks that may not have ever applied for ITEP before. Don't be scared. Maggie will help you. They'll walk through the process in their event series, so definitely attend it. And we also dropped a link to the engineering firms that can provide some pro bono assistance. And we really want to see all the communities in our region have access to these funds. So thanks so much, Maggie. And now we're going to turn it over to Laura McFadden, who is a transportation planner in the Cook County Department of Transportation. She works in the Strategic Planning and Policy Bureau, where she manages the Invest in Cook grant program and is part of the team working on Cook County's forthcoming bike and transit plans. She also works with the programming team to make the department's annual budget and multi-year capital improvement program, and does a little dabbling in GIS as well. Her time at Cook County began as an applied data and governance fellow through Harris's International Innovation Corps, And following her fellowship in 2019, she was officially hired by the county and has been diving deeper into intersections of transportation policy, municipal finance, and economic development. So we're so happy to have you here, Laura, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Audrey. We can hit next. Beautiful. This is perfect. The minimalist first slide is an Easter egg. As Audrey said, I'm Laura McFadden from the Cook County Department of Transportation and Highways. Essentially, the county approaches funding and building bike infrastructure with great enthusiasm. For those of you who don't know, investing in cycling infrastructure is fairly new for the county. In 2016, Cook County changed our department's name from the Department of Highways, full stop, to a Department of Transportation and Highways. We also started a Bureau for Strategic Transportation Planning and Policy Work and published our first long-range transportation plan in 75 years, connecting Cook County. Previously, the county's investments were, as the name might have indicated, restricted primarily to roadway projects and maintenance work on or adjacent to county assets and properties. Changing that curb-to-curb pavement-focused mindset and the way we allocate funding has not come easy, but we're getting better at it every year. We are, as a department and as a county, we are limited in where we can freely install new cycling infrastructure given jurisdictional restrictions. But we make up for that in dedication to increasing our investments in local and regional priority cycling projects. Cook County has 134 municipalities with transportation infrastructure under local, state, and federal jurisdiction. DOTH has jurisdiction over only 531 of the over 12,000 miles of roadway throughout the county. And that's a big, and it's geographically spread throughout it. It is not a unified 531 mile connected network. As an umbrella unit of government, we are able to step back, take a bird's eye view, and identify projects where our interventions can make the most sense and have the most impact for the highest number of residents. Much like roadways, which have, given us our education and we're applying it now to cycling infrastructure. Cycling infrastructure often requires coordination across multiple sets of these jurisdictions. As you can see on the slide, bike infrastructure requires projects to be implemented across all different kinds of governments and communities. Cook County is used to navigating these cross-jurisdictional conversations and initiating projects between jurisdictions that might not have been identified by either community involved. And this is especially helpful for the smaller organizations or communities who aren't used to implementing transportation projects, such as the smaller local park districts, of which there are over 80 plus in the county, 80 plus park districts, not municipalities, park districts, and the Forest Preserve. As part of the ongoing implementation of Connecting Cook County, DOTH is currently working on our bike and transit plans. Those plans will further define how the county can make impactful investments to support multimodal travel, including cycling. And I'll get to the bike plan on a later slide, but next slide. Beautiful. Oh, two slides too far. Or I might have changed the order. No, it was okay. Go 2 slides forward. I'm sorry. I apparently changed the order locally. Invest in Cook grants are a way that DOTH invests significant resources in building bike facilities and funding bike projects in locations outside of our jurisdiction. The program facilitates increased multimodal transportation and is designed to ensure truly equitable and inclusive investments for innovative transportation projects across the county. And we truly do mean equitable. For example, in the first 5 years of the program, Invest in Cook has awarded over $14 million to bike and pedestrian projects, with over 50% of those funds going to high-need communities. High-need defined by CMAP as a cohort 3 or 4 community. Cohort 3 and 4 communities are not required to provide a match for their grants, whereas we do require cohort 1 and 2 communities, those low need communities, to provide a dollar for dollar match. That's just one way we try to ensure the program is being as equitable with its investments as possible. Invest in Cook takes pride in the fact that we provide early phase funding for large, regionally significant projects that can help prepare those projects for state or federal funding for later project phases, such as construction, programs such as ITEP or CMAQ or STP. We also provide construction dollars to smaller projects that will substantially enhance the pedestrian and cycling environment locally. And this way they don't need to go through the federal funding process. They keep it simple, tight, local. It's important to note that Invest in Cook is funded through motor fuel tax dollars. Motor fuel tax, those collections are dependent on traffic levels and fuel consumption. In Cook County, because of our statutory allotment, we are able to both maintain our existing jurisdictional assets and take motor fuel tax dollars to then invest in expanding and enhancing our cycling and pedestrian networks. It's very exciting that we get to take money spent on gas and then implement and innovate for bikes. Through this program, DOF also provides enhanced financial and staff assistance on local projects that have tremendous merit or potential, but might otherwise stall due to a lack of local match or local staff resources. An example of this would be the Burnham Multimodal Connector. This project requires coordination with multiple railroad companies, the City of Chicago, the Village of Burnham, and the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association. And together, the project is able to move forward because of that coordination. You do not need to be a transportation department or local government to access Invest in Cook funds. We have given grants to nonprofit and advocacy organizations, including in 2019 and 2021, awards to Active Trans to support their Lake Calumet and Des Plaines River area cycling feasibility studies, and a 2021 award to the Friends of Big Marsh for an area feasibility study to improve cycling in the Lake Calumet area. And now next slide, sorry. This map is a draft map that's going to be in the Cook County Bike Plan that shows existing and planned low stress and cycling infrastructure across the county. This isn't an exhaustive map showing all cycling infrastructure. It's mainly meant to be illustrative of where we have identified clear network gaps in difficult to fill places. Note how the awards to non-government entities mentioned on the last slide are addressing some of those difficult to fill gaps. It's so great that we have these advocacy agencies able to come in and just take the reins and move things forward. It's lovely. We've really worked hard to diversify how the county thinks about transportation. We're committed to building and maintaining a world-class multimodal transportation network, and our investments in cycling and transit and pedestrian infrastructure and projects are reflective of that. We're currently finishing up the Cook County Bike Plan, which will further define how we can continue to transform the existing transportation system to increase both bike ridership and safety for cyclists by identifying the most useful and most impactful investments. The Bike Plan will help direct funds to projects that implement three key goals. The first, we want to make sure that there is a fully connected, viable, everyday cycling network throughout the county that allows people to commute to and from work, to and from the store. Additionally, we want to facilitate a fully connected, low stress network throughout the county that will provide just like separated and safe connections between places where people want to go. And then we also, through the Bike Plan, we want to significantly invest, through projects identified in the Bike Plan, we want to significantly invest resources in communities of color to address issues of historic disinvestment. This not only includes cycling projects, but also pedestrian safety projects. We will continue to use our resources to advance local agency and cycling advocate priorities and support local improvements. This can include, as I said, supplying a portion of a local match needed for a grant that will be in support of a high impact regional cycling project, such as the Skokie Valley Trail. We can support through writing grants on behalf of municipalities, and we can also just ensure that with our investments, we are working to expand the cycling network and not expand other roadway networks. And I can hand it back to the wonderful people at MPC.
Thank you so much, Laura. And I will also give kudos to Cook County with your bicycle plan and with the engagement that you've taken on in terms of trying to bring communities together with your kind of regional view. So now so thank you so much. And now I'm so excited to introduce Laura Newman, the city administrator for the city of Batavia. She was appointed in 2016 and enjoys serving the community where she lives by continuing the city's positive growth and bringing fresh new ideas from her experience as a manager, lawyer, and executive in the private sector. She formerly was a senior executive with Mituto America Corp in Aurora and has been an attorney in private practice, specializing in employment law for both the public and private sector. So it's great that she's bringing that skill set to her role as city administrator. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you very much, Audrey. And I'm really honored to be on this panel of experts in transportation. Although I'm not an expert in transportation and I'm not an expert in grants and funding, I live in a community where we have been blessed with visionary leaders who have made a commitment and are very obviously, listening to Abby, very passionate about improving biking and pedestrian experience in the city of Batavia. So I look forward to sharing some of the projects that we have worked on through the years and the strategies that we have used to fund those improvements to our community. Next slide. Going back to 1998, this is kind of digging way back into the past, but it is a project that our community is incredibly proud of. In 1998, through the efforts, it was basically an effort on the behalf of some very passionate, motivated individuals in our community who sought volunteers in order to have the labor to build this, to seek donations of materials and donations of contractor time to pull this off. With very little government funding. And it is a central part of our community where most of our major events are held. It includes a pathway around this area, which is known as the Depot Pond, which is a little inlet off of the Fox River. It includes a beautiful walk around a peninsula that shows the most beautiful scenes of the river in Batavia, and a beautiful gazebo that is the site of many, many photographs encapsulating important times in people's lives. So it's just to show what can be done by a very motivated group of individual volunteers. And it was built over a period of 6 years. Next slide. In 1999, the city was able to, with the help of state and local funding of about $1.7 million in grants, build this beautiful walking bridge over our river. Up to that point, it was, just the sidewalks that lined a road bridge over our river. And being able to build this afforded us the opportunity for our residents to more appreciate the wonderful natural feature that we have running through the center of our city that we're so fortunate to have the Fox River there. But in addition to that, we were able to extend the bike path on the east side of the river. It's one of the things that Batavia is very proud of, that we have bike path on both the east side and the west side of the river, which is kind of unusual up and down that stretch. So we are very glad we were able to do that. But, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that there are more improvements that could be made to that particular trail connection, because looking forward on this bridge, when you get to the end of it, in order to get down to the trail, there are stairs. And so that is definitely a project, something that we will be looking at to improve in the future in partnership with the park district that actually owns the lands. Next slide. The next slide is a very unique feature, which is located in our downtown, a Dutch style street design, which is called a Wooner. It uses a layout that combines pedestrian, bicycle, and motor traffic all in the same area, where the street goes right to the face of the building. It causes everyone to slow down and be cautious of one another as they travel through this area. The building of this took place between 2012 and 2013. And I'd like to point it out as a successful use of TIF funding. So by incentivizing development, we were able to utilize the increments that was created from that project in order to fund several areas of improvement on our main thoroughfares to address pedestrian and bicycle issues. This area of our community, again, we consider this to be our entertainment district. During COVID, we closed this particular portion of road, and our restaurants have been able to utilize that area for additional outdoor seating. But it is also the site of our fantastic farmers market throughout the summer and early fall months, where thousands of people come to gather each weekend. So we're really proud of the winner. Next slide. We also have a strong commitment to improving the sidewalk network that is throughout our community. We've been able to utilize Safe Routes to School funding in order to improve in the areas around our public schools. We collaborate with the school district to find out which areas are a priority for us to address in that regard. Another way that we address gaps in our sidewalk network is that the City Council has dedicated $100,000 per year in general fund money to improve our sidewalk network. We prioritize areas where there are gaps or there are no sidewalks and aim to have at least sidewalk on one side of the street. One thing I meant to mention on this slide and I didn't was that we also apply for community development block grant funding through Kane County and have several times been recipients of grant funding to address gaps in transportation in our low to moderate income areas of our community, which helps us to address equity in these types of improvements as well. Next slide. And also from a policy standpoint, we require developers to make connections to the regional paths within our community. We also require any new development, whether or not their sidewalk exists on adjacent properties, for them to either put sidewalk in because we plan there to be a sidewalk network there in the future, or in some cases, we will allow them to make payments in lieu so that we can fund sidewalk projects elsewhere in the community where that might be needed. And next slide. And lastly, I'd just like to bring up a few other projects that the city of Batavia is working on to improve bicycling and walking in our community. Right now, we're proposing a road diet for Illinois State Route 31, which is a 4-lane highway with no shoulder. And to be able to turn that into a 3-lane road would offer us the opportunity for more safer crossings for pedestrians and bicyclists, the opportunity for areas of refuge. We're updating our bike plan, and we thank the expert advice that we're receiving from the Active Transportation Alliance. Thank you very much, Maggie, for your help on that project. And we're seeking funding for a tunnel undercrossing of Randall Road at Main Street, which would represent a multi-jurisdictional project with Kane County. Batavia is part of a regional bike share system that has been in place for the last 3 years. And then also we utilize the Complete Streets design for road construction projects in this area. But I think the most important thing for City of Batavia is having the support of passionate and visionary elected officials like Abby Beck, pictured here on the right, on a recent crosstown ride that we undertook in order to identify difficult areas to bike in our community. And she has done a tremendous job of making the logical connection, as she stated in her presentation, to show by making a commitment to improving biking and walking improves equity, it has an impact on our environment, and it has an impact on our economic vitality. So the city of Batavia strives to be thought leaders in this area. Cannot understate the importance of collaboration with other organizations and other jurisdictions to accomplish the goals. And then finally, to get the commitment and engagement from our residents and involve them in these projects. I thank you for the opportunity to present the information to you today.
Thanks so much, Laura. Batavia is such a fantastic example from top to bottom. And I was just out there a few weeks ago and had lunch in the WONERF, and it was just wonderful. So now we're going to bring everyone back from the panel on screen and power through a few questions. We've got a few minutes, and I want to just, I'm going to start with asking, and so we'll try to keep answers tight. Cook County, so you've showed such great leadership, Laura, with your Invest in Cook program at the county level. What advice would you have for other counties that might be considering standing up a program like this?
Yes, so I think that a key part of that would be looking where you're investing your transportation allocated dollars right now and seeing if there's space to set aside, even if you're starting on a smaller level, like $1 million per year, $150,000 per year for local impact transportation projects in your county or community. Cook County is in a unique position when it comes to motor fuel tax dollars because of how they're statutorily allocated. And so we are able to fully meet our maintenance responsibilities while reprogramming dollars toward Invest in Cook to do new projects. I would love for any county that is interested in talking about their own, like Invest in Kane or McHenry, et cetera. Please feel free to reach out and discuss it. Because Cook County is always looking to create cross-county connections with other units of government to improve cycling infrastructure in the region. So making sure, at the end of the day, make sure you can meet your maintenance responsibilities because that's what your residents are going to demand vocally, while also reprogramming dollars where you may, stopping expansion projects and maybe refocusing those roadway expansion type projects toward cycling network expansion type projects.
Great, thanks so much, Laura. And then just maybe a technical question that maybe either for anyone, what does a local government have to do to use grant funding effectively? Like, how hard is it to get and use money?
This is something we've approached with Invest in Cook, given the capacity issues. I don't want to hop in if anyone else has a question.
Go ahead real quick, and then maybe Laura Newman.
Beautiful. When it comes to that, I think being incredibly communicative, at least from the county to the local municipality, and making sure we're communicating and that there aren't gaps in need that aren't being addressed, because sometimes those gaps in need can prevent projects from being fully implemented. Sorry.
I would just say that we are constantly on the lookout for opportunities for funding, and being part of organizations like CMAP really helps a lot, or also National League of Cities. We're signed up for a listserv with them with regard to the federal funding that's out there right now, and receive a lot of help in that regard. And then within our engineering staff, we have quite a bit of knowledge of access to funding sources.
Great, thanks so much. And now I'm going to answer a few questions that have come in through the Q&A and the chat. There's one that I'm just going to answer myself. It's a question about whether there is a plan for collaboration on the new Reconnecting Communities pilot program through the USDOT. And we, the Metropolitan Planning Council is actually convening an advisory committee, including Lindsay, including representative from Cook County, and including City of Chicago members, as well as community members. And we are gathering input from community members. I think we're going to drop into the chat a link to a website where folks who want to learn about this program and have ideas for projects can drop ideas. So please do that and please share that. That's open for the next month. So yes, there are conversations right now going on to try to coordinate so that we, the region submits, one really competitive application with consensus, and that's what CMAP's also trying to do to help build consensus among communities for these federal applications. All right, another question that was asked was, which was is being answered in the chat, is whether an aldermanic office could apply for ITEP, or do they have to have? Does this municipality have to apply? So I don't know if Maggie, you want to mention what your answer is.
I can briefly speak to that, but you would need to work with the city or taxing authority. That you can help the city apply, but the taxing authority has to guarantee that matching funds are available to carry out the project.
Great. And this is another one that might be for you, Maggie. There was a question about whether there's work being done on bicycle access to Big Marsh from the Lakefront Trail. I think Active Trans is working on projects in that area.
Yeah, we're very interested in that area and making sure different destinations are connected. We worked on a feasibility study thanks to the Invest in Cook grant to look at a bridge that could go connect the Pullman National Monument to Big Marsh, and Friends of Big Marsh is also looking at other connections to the surrounding area. So there's a lot going on with there, and I think right now it's like the pursuit of finding funding for the idea is ongoing right now.
Thanks. There's a question about whether any of your jurisdictions consider funding from non-DOT federal agencies like Health and Human Services, Labor, Economic Development. Could they be, they all have transportation needs too in their own ways. Have they ever been brought in to contribute to transportation projects that you're aware of?
So for the county, we have worked with our Bureau of Economic Development to deploy CDBG dollars, which are community development block grants. And I think those are from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And we've also considered funds from the Department of Commerce through their Economic Development Administration. And I think Batavia also would know.
Same, the CDBG grant, and just some of the other example, like utilizing TIF and applying those to pedestrian and bicycling amenities.
Great. There's a comment about including folks from environmental justice communities or Indigenous people. Is there a committee of folks that are working on racial equity? And there actually is a great effort going on in Chicago. I'm not sure if folks have heard of the Transportation Equity Network, which is a group of community-based organizations. It's a network that's led by 3 people of color and has over 40 community-based organizations throughout the region. The committee that I mentioned about reconnecting communities has members of TEN, the Transportation Equity Network, sitting on them, and they are being accessed for a lot of work by CMAP and Active Trans and Cook County. So that's a new structure that seems to be working well, and encourage folks to look into that group.
I'd also say Cook County, with our bike plan, we've been really active about making sure we reach communities of color, as Audrey said earlier, and also through TEN, we have, through the bike plan, sought out as many community perspectives as possible.
Great. And then I think there's a final question is, are IDOT capacity issues holding up any funds or projects? So how does, IDOT's a huge agency, capacity is often a challenge at large public agencies. How has that, is that an issue with ITEP or other types of projects, maybe the CMAP or Active Trans, if you have any thoughts?
For City of Batavia, it is holding up the road diet program moving forward. When we submitted our last report to them, and they said the soonest that they would be able to get back to us would be 6 weeks. And it's no, and I mean, no disrespect to them. It's just a lack of resources that they have in order to be able to address it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely capacity issues and many, like at the state level, county, local level, that everyone, a lot of agencies are dealing with. That's part of the reason why Active Trans got involved in the ITEP webinar series to provide more capacity and make sure we can support more communities and work with IDOT to get the word out. Yes, it would be great if all of these agencies could hire more staff specifically for walking and biking to advance these projects to a greater extent.
Yeah, great. And on that note, I mean, I think the way we allocate our public resources, it does show what our priorities are, just in general. So that's a great point to close on. So I want to just thank everyone. We're at time. Time has flown. So much good information. I want to thank all our expert panelists for joining us today. This is a great conversation. I'm sure we could have gone on a lot longer. We also want to thank HDR for being our generous sponsor for helping this event to have occurred. Please make sure to register for some of our upcoming MPC events in this series, this 5-part series. This is the 3rd event. We have 2 more coming up. One which includes a walking tour in Brookfield, Illinois on August 12th. So you could go to our website to register. And I want to remind everyone that a link to this recording and to the slides will be available and circulated via email to everyone who registered for this event. We'll also include links to all the things we dropped into the chat. So we'll send you that so you don't have to go crazy trying to copy them out of the chat. So thanks so much for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.